our Thank you. We've got a recording that is just getting started here. So if you have some folks that weren't able to attend, there will be a recording that we will send along with the meeting notes. But thank you all for joining us once again. This is our E-Truck Workforce Development Advisory Committee meeting. It is October 12th. We have just a couple more months in the year, and we are just thrilled to be part of this effort. My name is Stella Ursua. I'm the Senior Programs and Partnerships Manager here at Grid Alternatives. Our meeting agenda for today, we'll do just a little welcome and overview. We will go into the project itself and a little overview of our workforce development activities. We'll get some updates on the overall project, the E-Truck project itself. And then we have a couple of presentations from our friends over at World for Solar and Swell Energy. We'll have some time for discussion and feedback, and then we'll share some next steps for the project. And for all of you that are joining this first time around, please, if you could introduce yourselves in the chat. And, we want to make sure that we welcome you, that you are, we have you out on record as being part of the meeting today. Let's go through our introductions real quick. I've already introduced myself, but the rest of the Grid team, Shamika and Giovanni, if you could introduce yourselves.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shamika Dixon, and I'm the Director of Workforce Development at Grid GLA.
Thank you, Shamika. Giovanni?
Good morning, everyone. Giovanni Hernandez here, Clean Mobility Program Manager at Grid Alternatives Greater Los Angeles.
Thank you, Giovanni. And how about the CalStart team?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Tuan Chi. I'm a project manager here at CalStart. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you, Tuan. Giovanna?
That will be it for the CalStart team.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. All right. And Kristen from the EPRI team.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kristen Bush from EPRI. I'm with their electric transportation team as an engineer scientist. I'm looking forward to getting a discussion going today.
Very good. Thank you. We got everyone from the E-Truck team, right? All righty. So if we can go to the next slide here. Just real quick, give a little overview of the project. We always start our meetings, our presentations with a quick overview. And so the purpose of the E-Truck project is to create a California research hub to facilitate and accelerate the electrification of the medium and heavy duty drayage vehicle market in key areas. Our goals are to advance research, development, and demonstration activities that extend the delivery range of large weight class battery electric trucks, beginning with drayage operations. We want to engage broad stakeholders with the community first approach and use input to promote equity and workforce development opportunities in priority communities. And those communities include pollution burden and impacted communities. We also are looking at stakeholders from truck fleets, charging equipment, service providers, electric utilities, and planning agencies. And then finally, plan, design, and deploy innovative, scalable public corridor charging strategies for MD HD electric trucks, beginning with drayage trucks. And just a real quick note, I was on a call with the ports of Long Beach and ports of LA yesterday morning, and there's a lot of activity coming down the pipeline. So we're very excited to be part of this effort. Thank you. Next slide, and I believe, I'm sorry, Giovanni, this is also mine, right? Sorry about that. Okay, so the WDAC goals, objectives, and function. The goal is to ensure that pollution impacted, underserved, and tribal communities are involved in creating and guiding the initiative, and that these priority communities are involved and benefit from the larger clean energy transition for MD and HD electrification, the jobs that are created, and other resultant economic opportunities. We want our objectives include informing the project on workforce development needs and desired impact for priority communities, communicate project activities to relevant key partners and stakeholders, promote equity and workforce development opportunities in those communities, and foster workforce development partnerships in the targeted priority communities for zero emission freight corridor technology and development, planning, and job creation. And finally, the function of the committee is that we provide input on workforce development plans, support equity and workforce development goals, inform workforce development plan, and accompanying activities. Thank you. All right, the next slide, please. And I'm going to hand it over to Tuan so she can share with us some overall project updates.
Great. Thank you so much, Stella. So regarding the eTruck project, recently we had our industry partner presentation series on Charging 101. So the recording and presentation of this webinar is up on our website, which I will link in the chat in a little bit. Secondly, we completed our Tier 1 and OEM interview report. So this report pretty much encapsulate Tier 1 and OEM's perspective on high power charging, the associated costs, challenges, the current market, and it's in the final stages of publication. We're aiming for late October, and once that is live on the website, we'll ensure to send out email communication so you all can take a look. Regarding our Advanced Transportation Research Center, we've taken delivery of most of our equipment, and we aim for installation of these by the end of the year. And with our high power charging lab construction, we have approved plans from the City of Pomona, and we have planned for construction in Q1 of 2024. With our pilot sites, we have a signed host agreement for our MHX site in Carson. So this is one of 2 sites where we'll be deploying the high power charging testing. And lastly, with our technology transfer activities, we've launched all social media accounts for the eTruck project. So if you scan the QR code, you'll be able to access our Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn in order to keep up with our project updates. And I'll pass it back to Stella.
Sorry about that. All right, thank you, Tuan. Appreciate that. And so we're moving quickly into our presentations. We're very fortunate to have a couple of folks that we know that we have worked with in the past. So our guest presenters today are Nick Boateng, who is the Director of Solution Management for an organization called World for Solar. And Nick will introduce himself, but he was a longtime colleague here at Grid Alternatives. So we're very thrilled to still be working with Nick. And also one of our other presenter is Sean Jacobson, who is the head of project development for Swell Energy. And we've worked with Sean on a current project over in the La Puente area. I'm sure that Sean will give us a little bit of an update there. But we're so thrilled to have you both here. So I'm going to hand it over to Nick first. Nick, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Stella, good morning. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to have an opportunity to collaborate. And good morning, everyone else on the call. I'm Nick Boateng. As Stella mentioned, I'm actually, fun fact, I'm a direct product and result of Grid Alternatives workforce development programs, because I discovered Grid back in 2015 through a partnership at Santa Monica College. And that kind of led down a rabbit hole where I was like, what's this thing about solar, and so on and so forth. And so that journey took me through workforce development, and I also was part of the Grid Alternative Solar Corps program, which is like AmeriCorps if you're not familiar with it. It's a 1-year fellowship, and I also essentially helped develop the workforce development piece for Troops to Solar, the Troops to Solar initiative, which is a transition program that was for military veterans that are transitioning to renewable energy workforce. And so great times. I spent about 7.5 years at Grid. And so currently I've transitioned over to World for Solar. and my current role is I'm the director of solution management. What that essentially means is I work with technical leaders and solution platform developers to effectively address commercialization priorities based on market feedback. And in this particular space right now, electrification is kind of important. Our electrification infrastructure is lacking, and if we want to be able to achieve the goals that we want with electric vehicles, we're going to have to develop it and incorporate workforce development. And so excited to be part of this this discussion. Next slide, please. If you're curious about the current product brochures that we have on the market, please feel free to scan the QR code. I'll leave it up for a couple seconds, and then we can move on. Next slide, please. So World for Solar's vision and mission. Essentially, we want to shape a green future of intelligent energy production through solar power by using available space in the smartest way possible. And as a holistic solution provider of essentially easy to install solar carrier systems, we want to enable our customers to produce green electric power without compromising the original use of the space. Next slide, please. So our inspiration for the first product line essentially came from Greek mythology. So if you're not familiar with Helios, is basically he's a Greek god that had a flying chariot, the Greek sun god that flew from east to west, like the way the sun travels in the sky. And we said the inside joke is we said we're going to take his wings and give it to the rest of the world, so that way we can harness the power of the sun like a god. Next slide, please. Now, the sort of the intersectionality of the conversation here is with electrification. Our Helio Wing series, it is a unification, and we call our structure a unifier of four important pillars of electrification, renewable energy. It's a solar carport canopy, and in this particular instance, it's more the carport functionality that matters in this conversation. It generates the energy on site. I think the important aspect of this is there's a direct correlation with power being produced on site versus electrons that are flowing into that vehicle battery. And the purpose of that was to be able to say, we are producing as much of our energy on site that's going into that particular electric vehicle. So it's not just zero tailpipe emissions, it's zero emissions, or at least as much as possible, in the sense that we're not shifting the emissions to a different source. We're at least trying to demonstrate that for the electrons that are flowing into the chargers that we have, it is something that has a visual representation of that. So that's connected to the electric vehicle charging piece. And of course, on-site battery storage helps out in a lot of different ways. And I know when it comes to the DC fast charging space, if you're following the power demand that it requires to operate a DC fast charger, and sort of like the burden that it can have on the electrical grid and or the customer's electric bill. So beyond the energy demand, there's also beyond the energy consumption, there's also the power demand aspect. And so having energy storage on site allows you to do multiple things to help solve these problems. Next slide, please. For our particular design, we have a gapless design, and it's a modular system. So essentially what that means is when you put the wing together and you assemble everything, when it rains, it doesn't go through the canopy. And our cable management is baked into the structure itself. And so the wire management, a lot of times these days, aesthetics is becoming more and more relevant. To go in the electrification direction does not mean that we have to sacrifice on aesthetics. And so one of the things that has always been, I guess, a pain point is like all these wires hanging out, and some businesses don't want to have that at parking lots. Also, like it's an eyesore and so on and so forth. And so we consider that when developing this particular canopy. And the other piece is integrated lights. It's helpful to have a secure environment at night. And when canopies are essentially put together sometimes by project developers. They have to put these pieces together. And so the idea was to create a holistic approach that thought about all these things. Next slide, please. This is what it translates to in the real world. I show the nighttime picture so you can see the sort of the bottom of the panels. You don't see any wires hanging out, and also to give you appreciation for the LED lights. Next slide, please. Now, the cool thing about our structure is we have our battery system, our battery units integrated inside the column. And so this allows us for the single column installation, and we can stack up to about 25 kilowatt hours of battery capacity inside the column. And like you saw in the previous picture, everything is buttoned up, but at the same time, you have the ability to access it for service. Next slide, please. If you're curious about what that looks like, the way our battery box is built, there's a short video. If you're curious, the QR code links to my LinkedIn page, and there's like a little video that we did with our battery partners to demonstrate what that looks like. So I'll leave this up for a couple seconds for you. Next slide, please. Great. And just to reemphasize, as part of the overall electrification process and infrastructure improvement and development, it's important that we try our best not to have a lot of complicated ways to put the projects together. And so the design here allows you to replicate the same single column every single time. And there are different series that we're producing. For this particular one, it is a single column system that allows you to basically just dig one hole versus multiple holes. So and the installation process, it's kind of like, I wouldn't necessarily say an IKEA setup, but the idea is to make it to where you can put the pieces together a little bit easier, and I'll show you down the line as well. And of course, with integrated battery storage, like I said before, it expands your capabilities on site because you're bottling energy on site. And we don't actually produce electric vehicle chargers. This particular unit is designed for level 2. We are in the process, and I think the timing was great. So thank you for the invitation, because I did seek some additional information. We are in the process of developing a DC fast charging version of this. So right now there is this is agnostic to all level 2 charging. What that means is, if for the end user, a customer, a business owner, a nonprofit, if you wanted to put a Helio Wing in the parking lot and you wanted to give your staff free level 2 charging, you could. And also, if you had parking lot access and you want to monetize that as an additional form of revenue, you can have a partnership with ChargePort or whoever else and mount that level 2 charger on there and be able to still have that functionality. The lights provide the safety, and our structure it has a 20-year warranty. If you're not familiar with steel, it's grade 50 steel. It's some pretty sturdy stuff, and it acts like a bollard within itself. And yeah, it's a robust thing, so we guarantee it for 20 years. And I don't know if the rest of the stuff on the bottom of the slide is showing for you guys, but I see the icons but not the words. What that says is it's gap free, and also it's qualified for the investment tax credit. May I go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So our system size right now, sizes, there are 2. There's the Helio Wing 5. It comes in a 7.38 kilowatt peak system. Next slide. And then there's the Helio Wing 7, which is a 9.84 kilowatt peak system. Next slide, please. And the flexibility is important. So we wanted to make sure that with the singular unit, you have the ability to either go off grid or on grid, because the inverter partner that we have is with Solarc. And if you're not familiar with their technology, it is a transformerless hybrid inverter. So what that means is you can use that same unit to connect your off-grid setup, or you can grid tie it. It has the ability to get loads added to it, has the ability to do a home backup, has the ability to have battery storage and communicate with the BMS from the battery storage. So it's a pretty diverse solution set. So with that same unit, depending on the project scope, you can go grid tied or off grid with it. Next slide, please. For applications, the example that I gave, there you have the ability to use this on commercial properties. And so, if you have a parking lot available from car dealerships to businesses, to churches to city halls, if as part of promotion for electrification, if a city hall wants to demonstrate what the capabilities, like they could put one of these off it for their citizens to come by and check out what it looks like, see what electric vehicle charging the capabilities can do, and so on and so forth. Next slide, please. And you also have the ability for residential that just, depending on the applications. For example, I was on a call with a project developer that was developing in the high desert area, and kind of the setup, because they had these limitations with trees that were protected. It was difficult to put canopies that had 4 legs, and so they're looking for an energy solar canopy that takes up less of a footprint in that example. And so it allows to provide contractors a tool to add to their tool belt to create more diverse and dynamic project scopes. Next slide, please. Now, connecting the dots for this space in workforce development. Next slide, please. So the Gila wing is actually domestically produced. Or at least a big portion of the materials. So we currently fabricate and assemble in Bakersfield, California. I had the pleasure, and I say pleasure because it's one thing to read about it on the internet, and it's another thing to actually go through the experience. I had the pleasure and opportunity to follow the steel, the material from its genesis all the way through. If you can go to the next slide, please. So, I saw sort of the amount of effort that it took, and also the opportunities that it created just to assemble our unit. So in my mind, I was thinking, imagine if there was more domestic production on different things, and the opportunities that it opens up. So I saw the steel in its raw form, going through the plasma cutting, the laser cutting, the welding, the measurements to make sure that it's correct, the fitting, the painting, the prepping, etc. If you go to the next slide, please. And then, like, we followed it all the way through to the first installation. And it was fascinating because the lead engineer that we worked with, I appreciated how he wanted to go through the entire process, because it allowed us to see the opportunities for improvement, and also the opportunities for knowledge sharing, which is connected to the workforce piece. If you go to the next slide, please. And beyond, we had a chance to have a booth with our fabrication partners at RE Plus, and it was fascinating, the folks that came up, the type of questions that they asked beyond the sort of the capabilities of the unit, but also how it's connected to opportunities for their teams to learn a new skill set, or to learn about a new innovative technology. Next slide, please. This list here is not an exhaustive list, but I'd like to make the argument that when you have domestic production, it allows us to expand our workforce development opportunities. And if you kind of read some of these job opportunities to workforce, if you notice, they're not even necessarily directly connected to electric vehicle charging or solar panels and so on and so forth, but it's a larger ecosystem. And so recognizing and acknowledging that, and trying to make those connections, because from the steel, there are roles in here that I didn't know of prior to this, but they had an opportunity to do work. They had an opportunity to learn a different way of how to do the work. And also, if the investments were made, there could be additional opportunities for folks to learn about all these things that kind of create the ecosystem that makes electrification possible. Next slide, please. For our particular product, we do have a certified integrator program, and the way it essentially works is we train people on on how to install our specific unit. But it's designed to be not too complicated. There are certain skill sets that you do need to have, which is something that we discuss. To assemble the unit itself, when it comes from the factory, a lot of the components inside are already pre-assembled and pre-wired. So it's more about understanding, if you're going to do the foundation work yourself, understanding a little bit about how foundation work works and the permitting process associated with that, and also just being able to operate a telescopic or reach forklift, and just have an understanding of power tools. And so we go over all those things. Next slide, please. Just to give a snapshot of the foundation work, we do, our product is rated for 130 mile per hour wind loads. In order to achieve those ratings, and that's with 70 pounds of 70 pounds a square foot for snow load. So in order to achieve that, you have to have a solid foundation. And so, just understanding the dynamics of what the foundation work is, and we provide all the structural and technical assistance to be able to get that right. Next slide, please. If you want to, as I'm saying a few words, if you want to check out kind of like a 60-second video of the installation process, please feel free to scan that QR code. But essentially, we thought about sort of repurposing material. So if you notice, the wing that's being built, it's sitting on an assembly stand. That was also actually the shipping crate. And so our shipping crate converts to an assembly stand. And when you finish building the wing, and you can break the crate down, and there's a return label, so we can reuse that shipping crate because it's steel, it's pretty robust. Next slide, please. That's what I have. I appreciate the opportunity. If you'd like to get in touch with me, it's my understanding that the presentation will get put out, but just in case, if you want to get in touch with me, that's my contact info. And that's what I have. I believe we're taking questions later, so I'll pass the next part of this process to Sean.
Great, thank you, Nick, and wonderful to see the technology that you're now bringing to the market. And as an integrator, and I will do a little bit more review of what we do, I'm certainly interested in the technology, and solutions like that can really help us to visualize what's real and how the electrons flow. So that's wonderful. So again, intro, Sean Jacobson, head of project development at Swell. And my slides here I'm going to touch base on kind of the overall aspect of what we do at Swell, but then also zero in on some of the more direct integration of this technology into the grid, and what the workforce needs are for that. I've been in the industry now for since 2007, but I was a very active college student as well when I went through City College and university system, involved in sustainability initiatives since 2002, and really got into this industry because of knowing that there's a different way to do things, and whether that's energy or waste or transportation, or a number of other aspects of how we live on the planet, that there are different ways. And so constantly inspired by everyone doing the work to look out for a better future for everyone. So next slide. About Swell. So we founded in 2014. I joined Swell in 2016 when it was a little bit more formulated. And the vision was that there's a way to power the grid without the traditional fossil fuel grid network that we have currently, which is, and there's a solution here for more distributed grid. So the original focus was really around energy storage, and knowing that in the market with residential, that actually there wasn't a huge market at that point. So for the last, since 2014, since 2016, we've been a part of what's become a very large emerging market. There's been a number of incentives available and programs we've participated in, namely, some unique programs like Stella mentioned with the Bassett Avocado Project, which I can talk about, but also programs like SCHIP, which is a statewide program administered through the CPUC, where we've been one of the primary developers alongside Grid Alternatives. Actually, it's a great case study statewide to bring batteries to customers in need for either backup power or time of use savings in some cases with their solar. But essentially deploying these batteries as part of these statewide initiatives and utility initiatives, equity resiliency, the equity programs, and there's some new programs coming online as well that will continue to look at deploying these batteries statewide for homeowners, but also commercial entities. We've done a lot of work with tribal projects throughout the state, the same type of programs actually fueling the resiliency services for regional health centers and fire departments, emergency services, really doing some work to harden the grid to make it more resilient in the case of power outages, but also to support a future grid that can be more distributed and connected, and certainly a lot of opportunities within the transportation sector to make these connections. Next slide. So Swell has essentially 3 integrated business units. So as mentioned, I'm the head of project development, which is essentially this DevCo organization where we seek to work with partners like Nick's company to bring new technology to the market, whether that's solar, energy storage, electric vehicle charging is certainly a part of what we do. We do focus on residential, but we have a group on commercial projects. Even in the LA area, we did the demonstration project for SoCal Gas with hydrogen fuel cell and energy storage and carport solar. So some really innovative stuff out there that's happening both in pilot phase, but also more market ready technology. And we also work within the new homes departments or project developments. So actually more of the tract home type project developments or urban infill, quite a few projects there. We have a finance organization, so often there's a need to have low cost financing, and especially serving LMI communities or just being able to get this technology out to a broader market. There's a lot of work happening right now to make these types of solutions more accessible, whether it's on bill financing, no FICO, these types of things that really allow this technology to be adopted without upfront cost to support the grid infrastructure changing. And then the GridCo organization, which is our kind of pillar as a company, which is to connect all of these distributed systems, whether they're solar and storage or storage standalone or EV to grid, EV to home, et cetera, to support the grid. And when I say supporting the grid, this can come in many ways. We have numerous programs with Southern California Edison, with San Diego Gas and Electric, with SMUD, with PG&E, where we actually are what's called a grid services company, where we provide a service, i.e. usually energy, some form of electrical service, to be a part of their supplier for energy and management of the grid. And so what that looks like is we actually connect all of these systems together and then work with the utility to solve an issue they might have. So whether that's reducing demand during these peak windows on kind of a daily basis, or doing things called frequency shifting, where we can actually just change the frequency of the batteries to help adjust that grid so there's no brownouts and items like that in situations they need us. Big partnerships in Hawaii as well. So it's the connection of all 3 of these that we see as a company. We're able to really be, I mentioned integrator. It's not just integrating maybe a technology like the solar and storage, but it's also how do we allow that to happen, pay people well to do these projects through kind of the financing organization and the overall structure, and then connect the grid to further support the communities that we serve, but also provide more incentives for customers to adopt these technologies. Next slide. So just a quick snapshot of what are we talking about for a home? We really focus currently on battery storage. That as I mentioned is what we started with, but we quickly got into pairing with solar, either existing or new solar. We don't do too much solar only. We usually have a battery connected, and then we certainly do EV charging. So as we we look at doing pretty substantial electrical infrastructure improvements on homes and businesses, that's the right time to do EV charging. You're upgrading panels, you're doing the electrical work, the electricians are there. So we always incorporate at least a little bit of forethought into how EVs are going to be connected either with the project or in the future. And then, of course, there's a number of other kind of electrification elements that some of you might be familiar with, and a large push, for electrification and decarbonization, which we're certainly behind supporting these other projects. I'll use this opportunity to talk about Basset Avocado project Nick introduced us to actually at Grid, and the great partnership with the Energy Coalition and a number of probably folks that are on this call. And what we're doing is actually kind of a whole house electrification approach where not only are our homeowners getting upgraded to these types of energy efficient and electric appliances, but they're also getting the solar and the battery storage to kind of ensure that they have savings and resiliency in their home as part of a whole home electrification, upgrade, if you will. And we've connected to some innovative financing solutions. We've paired the grant money with SCHIP money, with some other money to help bridge the gap in kind of cash flows. And so it's really just a great project example of a lot of folks coming together to determine how we can bring this forward. And there's a lot of people doing a lot of work on these projects too, as we start talking about workforce. Next slide. Oh, can I get the next slide there? Just another snapshot of some of the technology, what we're talking about. So Tesla Powerwalls are kind of the most prevalent home batteries on the market, but there are a number of other products out there. Whether it's Enphase or LG Electronics actually has some technology, Franklin, SolarEdge, Generac, just to name a few of the technology providers that are out there, and there's a lot more. Smart panels where circuits are now becoming more manageable, right? So that they can either automatically be controlled like remotely via apps, or during an outage, they can do load shedding. So certain things turn off to support that home to last longer during a prolonged outage. Even things like EV integration, where it's very expensive to upgrade service panels on homes and businesses, and sometimes impossible. So there are smart panels out there that are energy management system certified that allow you to stay with your existing service size, like a 100 amp panel maybe, and then only allow 100 amps to come through. So for instance, if your EV charger was plugged in and you were doing other stuff in your home, it would actually limit the EV charger from even charging. So a lot of this just smart charging infrastructure to help with an aging grid and sometimes like very expensive grid to upgrade if we need to. Next slide. So just kind of an end-to-end, what do we do? Well, we're enabling the movement towards an electrification future through very customized energy solutions for homes, financing solutions to allow these technologies to be implemented, the installation and project development, everything from procurement to install, servicing, et cetera, and then connecting these systems to the grid. When the customers want to, this is a customer choice, but when they do want to be connected to these programs and even earn money by participating in these programs. Next slide. So this is just a snapshot of virtual power plants. They're all connected. Looks like my little dotted line's got a little wavy, but essentially I'm just looking at that image there. This is just kind of speaks to what the customer enrollments and grid services and incentives look like. And so really it's, again, customer choice. We work with utilities to make programs that customers want to participate in. And they just, it comes down to, is that going to impact their quality of life or anything? And the difference here is that with a battery, we can help move that energy to power the home, or to help that customer use that energy during these expensive times of the day behind the scenes. So we're supporting them to actually make the most out of this technology, and then also get paid by the utility to do so. And a simple example that actually is had some resistance and just consumer resistance is something like a thermostat controlled system where you can have a cheaper electric bill, but the utility has the ability to turn off your air conditioning during those really hot days. That's not necessarily what people want to do, and it could cause issues. So this doesn't impact the quality of life or any really observable impacts to the home, and it really allows us to bring value to customers and homeowners and businesses, but also again support the grid. Next slide. So I'll end with this, and I really I think there's some conversation here, but this was a slide I updated slightly. We're doing workforce development with Grid Alternatives actually, and SMUD for one of our virtual power plant programs in Sacramento, and working with folks like Habitat for Humanity and others as well. And there's a number of specific training programs up there that I kind of made more generic for here. And I'm sure a lot of folks that are representing these training programs are on this call. And really what we look at here is this kind of connection between all these programs. They're missing a couple lines here that are important. I'm going to just describe here on the left, which is there is a connection between like programs like Grid has or community college programs with programs like WECA or even the unions, where there's a need for electricians. I think that's like when we talk about like what's the real need. It's to get folks on a pathway to becoming electricians. That's going to be one of the higher paying field type jobs, but also the most important job for integrating these technologies, at least on the electrical integration side. But often folks need more than just the electrical trainings to be able to get into that pathway. So they might be co-enrolled in programs like community college programs, or working with Grid Alternatives, or on the job training with OEMs, which most of the major programs actually have amazingly funded training certification programs that you can, you do a few of those and pretty soon you've done, some of the best training in the industry. But those, you have to also be enrolled in these other accreditation programs, whether it's through unions or it's through WECA or some other IBEW, or I mentioned that there, like these other apprenticeship type training programs, if you want to go down that pathway of becoming an electrician. So all of these are connected. The site surveyors being a great entry point, which is data collection, photos, solar installers, which don't have to be electricians, but there's certainly an element there. The electricians, battery installers, EV charging electricians, and so forth. An entry-level job of a laborer, just someone that's going to be there to support, to watch people for safety. There's really important roles for folks that don't have necessarily the skills yet, but to be exposed to these job sites and to support the team for quality, safety, cleanup, and just to begin to get introduced to tools and on job install integrations. And then back end office stuff, delivery, warehouse clerk, etc. There's a whole other element here, and I'll wrap it up with this, and we go pass the mic on to the next part of the program. But there's an element here that I often, it's not always part of the conversation, and I would just encourage it to be, which is the other element of business, whether it be sales or marketing or back-end administration, coordination. These are very high paid jobs as well, compared sometimes to some of the more physical work. And while there's pathways in which, similar to Nick, in some of my pathways, while I'm college educated, I did start as an installer. I was on roofs and learned a ton there and was able to have a pathway. But making sure those pathways are there for folks and they don't get stuck forever unless they really enjoy it as these folks. But there is opportunity. But I also believe we should be looking at, for people that don't want to be on the roof or doing the labor, how can we also train them for pathways into some of these other positions within business and just overall management. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Nick and Sean for these great presentations and an overview of your products and the work that you all do. but also tying it into these different workforce opportunities. And it's essentially your business model, your products that kind of intersect between these different clean energy sectors that before used to be siloed, right? It was just like you were just a solar company or just battery storage or just EV charging. Now you're seeing the integration of these technologies, the intersection really of these different clean energy sectors in products, right? As the technology advances. And certainly we can apply that to this project, down the line, I'm sure for medium duty, heavy duty truck charging infrastructure, you will see a lot of the integration, right, with these different technologies as the technologies advances, being paired with solar, being paired with battery storage. That's not far-fetched, right, to see that. And so given, the work, the expertise of your companies is why we invited you both to speak today. And I greatly appreciate you both for your time and your wonderful presentations. And so I'm gonna go ahead and proceed with just a couple of panelist discussion questions that we prepared for our guest speakers, and then we're gonna move forward with Q&A from our audience. And so in the meantime, for any one of our attendees that have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. And then when we get to the Q&A piece, we can certainly pull from there and read your questions to our guest speakers. But also when we get to the Q&A piece, you'll have the opportunity to unmute yourselves as well and ask the questions that you might have for our guest presenters today. But I'd like to kick it off with our first question here. Anyone can start us off here with a response. And you were kind of touching in towards the end with your last slide there, Sean. And we wanted to kind of gauge from you both, from your expertise and what you're seeing, what are some top common skills across these different clean energy sectors that now we're seeing are intersecting with one another? Where do you see an overlap in skills, and where do you see gaps in skills and trainings?
Nick, do you want to go first, or?
I think you should actually, because you touched on it with the electricians, and I'll follow up with you.
Yeah. I mean, I think like I've got a 17-year-old, and I'll speak to this, and I've tried and I've tried to get him in the trades, and in fact, even he's registered with WECA right now. It's not working for him. It's actually pretty intense training, but getting the, I guess, how should I say it? I'm not as fast this morning. I guess I need more coffee, but getting it okay, that the trade, like for high schoolers, that going down that pathway, like within academic institutions, like really just making that okay. I think we need to really, like, in fact, not even okay, but like make them heroes, because that work is just so important, and it leads to so many opportunities. And and not to speak too much about my son or personal, but he's like, no, I think I can bypass that and like become a businessman and do marketing online, and and he's actually doing influencer stuff. He's like he might figure it out, right? And good for him. But he's also like looking out, like window washing, like creating a company and all this, like how can we fuel that spirit of entrepreneurship, because they all want it, but also give them the skills and opportunities, and like just general like support to go down the trades pathways if that's where we're headed, and also that being a really easy way to go. So Nick prompted me with electricians. Absolutely, we need that. But I was thinking about it this morning prior to this call, and I was thinking, and if we just took all this money and just gave some tools away, because what are you going to do with a tool? You're going to figure out how to use it, so some safe tools like screwdrivers or whatever it might be, but like let's just start giving tools away, and like proverbially, but like, let's do it. And, you get people to figure out how things work and how things connect together, because those connections, like whether it's an electrical single line engineering diagram, that just gets your brain thinking about how the connections work. Or if you're taking apart something and putting it back together. Anyway, that's that. I'll stop my rant. But I think it gets people getting folks with tools and getting that training and being okay with that as a pathway for folks, and paying them well, and, so that they're interested in doing this work. Yeah, and that all goes back to there's knowing that generation, people don't want to work, and I think that's one of our biggest challenges, to do that hard work. I don't know if that
Yeah, Sean, great. There's definitely a lot to unpack there, and what I'll do to add to that is, when it comes to kind of connecting the dots of the value of that skill set, what I discovered along the pathway is, for example, with the workforce development piece that I did at Grid Alternatives, so like a direct correlation, learning about solar panels in the classroom and the technology and the hardware, et cetera, how to mount a ladder, blah, 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 and actually seeing the end result of the impact that it was having on the family that was receiving the solar electric system was transformational for me. And so I think, in my opinion, to inspire a direction of workforce, we should also have the sort of like the larger social impact or economic impact benefit that not just that individual is receiving, but how it's connected to a holistic picture. Because a lot of people want to do good. It's like we generally want to do good and well for others. And so when I saw, like, even right now, when we were doing the welding, when we initially started working with the welders that were working on our product, before we gave them the why and the end result, the way they were welding the hardware was according to how they understood the hardware should be welded. But as soon as they saw the connection to the big picture and felt that they were part of that ownership of getting that sort of that final solution, they got more inspired to do better. And it was fascinating to see that. And so when we actually finished the first product, the first prototype, and showed them the results of their work, that inspired them even more. And then it connected the dots to the larger picture. And that's the entire ecosystem, from the steel worker to the forklift operator, to the procurement specialist, to the laser and plasma cutting machine operator, to the electrician. When there's an understanding of how their part commits to a larger sort of like positive result, I've just personally seen a difference in sort of embracing those skill sets that are kind of dying, if you will. That's what I got.
Thank you both. And to follow up, does for the various products that you guys walked us through, do each of your companies currently require any specific certifications and or training, right, for the installation, but not just the installation, but also repair and maintenance, right? That these products may need, maybe not immediately, but in the future, right? So is that taking place, or like upskilling happening already just within your existing workforce, or are folks coming in from different backgrounds and also getting trained, or when you're hiring, do they need specific certifications and trainings to be hired?
I'll take a pass at it. I think like the solar industry and energy industry, like focusing on the development aspect of it versus financing or or the grid services stuff that Swell does, which, by the way, I want to make sure there's pathways to those as well, right? Like, I think it's really important to focus on these other elements of business. But within the project development specifically, there's you don't need anything. You don't even need a high school diploma. Let's, like, if that's not the right pathway for someone, like, you get it. We have a great partner up in I'll just mention them, Revolution up in Idaho. They're working with the Nez Perce, and they've actually pretty much hired like majority of folks that are, you know, in that tribe. And they the thing about tools, they just give them tools. That day one on the job is let's go build it. And I just love that attitude. I've done some workforce development stuff, and back actually in 2008 in LA, was doing some work in Homeboy Industries and Venice Community Housing Corporation and some other folks, and really great opportunity experience. And it was there was like 2 days of like classroom training, and it was, you know, it was hard. I was younger. I was putting it out there. And then when you got them out there in the field, like the next point, and they did something, they built something, that's when you start to see folks light up. So you can get in without anything. Certainly like basic job skills are always great, whether it's communication, showing up on time, these types of things, using, you know, email communication and, you know, some of the software that's out there. That's going to be helpful for anybody. So some basic, like, you know, certifications from like Google, or, you know, simple things could go a long way. It's like, cool, you've developed some skills. That's great. Then there are certifications within, I mentioned OEM. So there's tons of certifications. Nick probably has a program started as well, where you're going to get certified by that technology you're installing to become a qualified installer. And I think those are like, they look good. You can print them out if people are really proud of the work that they're doing to grow, and they're really accessible for folks. So again, you get in, you get working, and then you get usually access, whether it's one of our subcontractors or Swell directly, you get access to these types of certifications out of the gate. Then there are like, back to the electrical stuff, like, you got to be, if you're touching wires in California, you got to be, you got to go down the right pathways. There's laws around this, whether it's you're getting set up as an apprentice, working under somebody, but you got to kind of go through those processes. So helping people, if they want to go down the electrical path with that's something that it's kind of cumbersome, and it takes work to really align. And I think we need so many electricians that, and if folks from the union are here, like, thank you for the work you're doing. How can we expand it, right? How can we open that up to way more people, and get those folks moving in and through? And of course, they got to show up, and they gotta, it's hard work to go down that pathway, and there's quality. But, are there other ways that we can get these folks, kind of those doors open for those folks, to increase the number of opportunities? So, stop there, Nick.
Yeah, I love that answer, Sean. Well said. What I'd say, what I can add to that is, for as an OEM, yes, to Sean's point, we have a certified integrator program, and we're actually, I appreciate you mentioning the training. We're actually, I'm taking lead on that. We're developing both a hard site, to where folks can come in and touch the hardware and install it, break things, learn before they do it on a job site. And we also have an online reference tool and a point that's in the middle of development right now. And so for the Helio Wing series, there is a particular installation sequence that you have to follow in order to install it to meet the wind loads, and so on and so forth. And so the skill sets involved in that, it's broken down in I guess 2 buckets. On the manufacturing side, we do a lot of the heavy lifting. We will, we assemble all the sort of the hardware that goes inside the column. So when it arrives on site, the integrator spends less time putting and tinkering those pieces together so they're able to deploy more units faster. And the image that you saw, so on sort of like the manufacturing side, to Sean's point, that does take more energy and effort because it is an amalgamation of different skill sets. It's not a singular skill set. We have structural engineers, we have electrical engineers, we have welders, we have folks that run heavy duty automation, who understand software, who understand hardware, and so it's so many different learning opportunities just for example, a laser and plasma cutting machine operator, and connecting that dot to the sort of the end result. So I can, we can create like a mind map of all the different connections, both the soft skills and the hard skills. But essentially on the OEM side, it does take a lot more energy and commitment. On sort of like in the field installing, the concept is similar to you have a rooftop installation crew that's showing up, and they have the concept down for understanding conduit, so on and so forth. In our case, our structure comes with all the pieces that you need, and you just have to be able to understand how to follow instructions and put those pieces together. And depending on if you're grid tying your system or not, it still comes down to having somebody that has electrical knowledge on site, just a little bit. Because if you're gonna do an off-grid system, even though our system is pre-configured, just understanding what the connections mean and making sure that for your part of the connection process, you're not cross-wiring things and burning things up. That's an important skill set. The same concept for electric vehicle charging. It requires an electrician. It requires a person that understands how to use some basic power tools.
Absolutely. No, and thank you both for also stressing how there's, it's not just on the electrical side of things. There's all these other different skill sets and roles, right? Leading up to an installation, et cetera, that are also really important, that those types of admin business roles will see an increase, right? As these different sectors continue to grow, and increase in demand for different projects and products. You're going to see an increase in many of those roles that are going to be important to support, all the installations and maintenance and, on the electrical technical side of things. You're going to need folks in those roles too, right? To get things moving and going as well. So thank you for stressing that, because that is really important. And that is something that, as we think about recommendations, right, for upskilling, for training in this sector, right, charging infrastructure sector, we can't forget those very important roles as well. So appreciate that. And as I mentioned, this body, this Workforce Development Advisory Committee for the eTruck project, needs to put together recommendations for trainings, et cetera, in this sector. And so what would your recommendation be to this project on how to transition workers that are currently in the fossil fuel industry into the clean transportation sector?
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak to kind of generally the electrification sector, because that's, we're not as so focused on transportation, but it's certainly a part of what we do. But in terms of electrification, I mean, we've got a number of folks in our company that have transitioned, and back to electricians. Like the electrical trades goes one and one, right? There's a lot of electricians in the fossil fuel industry. The electrical infrastructure to manage the pumps and the wells and all of that is a big thing. So I think that's probably most relevant from like the more skilled trades standpoint. And then for looking at like Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of folks in the fossil fuel industry across the board. So I think any of the business elements of it are completely transferable. And there's a ton of people I know that are ex fossil fuels industry that from business that have just migrated over, if you will. And yeah, and labor is kind of a 1-to-1. So yeah, I'll stop there. But I think the electrical work is a very easy transition to make.
I appreciate the answer, Sean. And I would say that I agree because, for example, the fabrication partner that we're with, they also manufacture for oil and gas. Like they have hardware for oil and gas, and so you see the folks. It's like the irony is that you know those same folks they work on both in both sectors, and so like exactly your point. I saw this firsthand where it's like fabricating hardware for rigs, and then then fabricating our hardware for renewable energy. And so there's definitely a direct crossover. I would say the additional thing that for folks that want to make the transition over is when it comes to electrification, one, understanding the language, just the fundamental language, and having a true understanding of the power that is required for electrification to happen, or the energy that's required, and where we're getting that energy from, and sort of making that direct connection of, if I have a DC fast charger, or 10 DC fast chargers that are connected to this particular area, how does that impact the electrical grid? And how can we create education around providing people the knowledge so solutions can be born from understanding how to do a true like a true transition? Because if we're honest with ourselves, it's like if you're talking about a DC fast charger that's hooked up that requires a 250 kilowatt peak output to charge a battery, are we able to continuously show where that power is coming from to charge that vehicle? And if not, can we put sort of tools and education around folks to understand what power demand is, understanding what energy consumption is? So I think just kind of going back to the basics of, what does this energy language look like, and how is it correlated to the hardware that's actually being deployed out there? And so that's something very basic that you can touch on for education. So, like folks really know the difference between like a kilowatt and a kilowatt hour, what demand charges are, what peak shaving is, like what does that all mean in the larger conversation of electrification? And by having that foundational understanding, I think it's going to help develop more solutions to address demand charges and so on and so forth. That's what I think.
Wonderful. No, thank you. I appreciate the recommendations and the responses here on that. And last question on my end before I turn it over to questions from our attendees. What kind of projects are on the horizon for each of your companies? Any plans for overlap with medium duty, heavy duty truck charging applications with your products? Anything on that? I know you mentioned DC fast charging, Nick, but yeah, last question on my end there.
Sure, I can start. That was good. So Giovanni, that's why I asked. I think a week before last. It's perfect timing because we're actually in the middle of developing a DC fast charging unit, and sort of it can go in two directions, and the feedback's important. We wanted to be able to say, okay, if we're not able to provide the sort of the energy offset for charging that vehicle directly, can we at least peak shave that power demand? And so based on the amount of power that you think you need on a site, what battery capabilities can we provide with our solution to respond to that? So when that DC fast charger is put in, then the battery can step up to shave that demand from the electrical grid, and how much of a battery capacity do we need to do that per site? Because if you have 4 DC fast chargers, and you're running them at the same time, what does that look like? How much of that demand can we shave? Because we know it's going to be difficult to have a direct sort of renewable energy offset for DC fast charging, because your power demand is totally different. It's much higher. And so what does that look like? So we're dead smack in the middle of that. Your feedback for the questions I asked is super important. And hopefully by the end of Q1, we're going to have our first prototype out to address that solution.
Awesome. Look forward to hearing about that, Nick. That's cool. So for Swell, I mean, I think we're the stuff that Nick hinted at about kind of demand charge mitigation and grid services. This is what really interests us. And so we do have some projects out there in the EV charging space, small, medium, mostly. Some of the larger stuff, could have some really big implications for grid services. And I'll speak to a few projects that are out there that we're certainly keeping our eyes on. We're staying pretty focused, but we're tracking the industry closely. And I think we'll see more and more opportunity, and probably Swell will get more involved in these types of projects where, for instance, a school bus fleet, electric vehicle school bus fleet that operates in the morning and then at 2 or 3 could then charge from the grid off peak, or might still have some excess energy, and then serve the grid during the peak hours between 4 and 9 through grid services for at least the current peak that we're experiencing on the grid, and then charge again in the morning or midday when the sun is shining most. You think about or at night, but that's usually going to be fossil fuel generation. So the best case from like a decarbonization standpoint, if we really look at this holistically, is you would have that school bus pick up the kids in the morning, park under the carports, which a lot of schools now have carports, plug in, charge during the peak solar window during the day, use that a little bit of energy to bring the kids home, and then the rest of that energy go and serve the grid. Like that's like a wonderful case study. So I think we're going to absolutely be a part of those types of projects. And it's just, we're still in bit of market transformation, technology, policy, electrical, there's still like, how do we interconnect with the grid? So a lot of the stuff's still in pilot phase with utilities and so forth. But as that becomes more approved, huge opportunity for that type of interconnection.
That's wonderful. Thank you both for sharing, and I can't wait to see as all that work continues to unfold. And Nick, we will definitely get you a response to those technical questions. We're going to make sure to follow up with our EPRI colleagues and Southern California Edison colleagues as well, that are kind of dealing with those aspects of the project that can help answer your questions. So I'll personally make sure to be following up with them to get you some responses. So thank you for that, Nick. I see 2 questions in the chat from our attendees. So before we wrap up, want to see if we could just address that. Anyone else that has some questions, feel free to put it in the chat or unmute yourselves. I do see Dr. Yanez mentioned something about if there are currently any entry-level job openings. You said for either. Dr. Yanez, can you expand what you mean for either?
Oh, either of the 2 companies. So are you local? So fantastic presentations. A lot of it is like, wow, mind blowing. Cause it's when you said like, it's like, up, is it up in the cloud? Like, the way you described it, Sean, I don't know, but it's so much I have to learn. And then I'm trying to see how it translates down to entry level basic skills, and are there jobs? Because I'm running a training program, and I saw like Jaime, I think, also looking for partners. We're running training programs. Just want to know, is there any, are there any openings right now? And especially if we're training priority populations and they're not electricians yet, or they're not in, they don't have any kind of certifications yet. What is the current opportunity right now for entry level jobs?
Yeah, totally. Any chance, Giovanni, can you flip to my last slide? It's the one with the boxes and arrows, if possible, or whoever's in charge of the.
Yeah, Tuan can get us there.
That's Tuan. Thanks, Tuan. Awesome. So I didn't touch on this in my presentation, but in terms of like house well, like really to look at entry level. So what we do is we do serve the LA area, but also California, and I mentioned on the map, like we're in Hawaii and Carolinas and New York. But we have a lot of projects that go in LA greater area, and would love to connect the dots. And so what I mean by that is, so we use local subcontractors, generally electrical outfits or solar companies, and we've got a network of close to 100 now of these partners. And in terms of our support of these initiatives and initiatives kind of broadly at Swell for workforce development, I see a great role for us to help connect the dots between the workforce training programs and our partners. So for instance, whether it's a site survey partner, which is like a distinct part of it, or things like back on the administrative side, maybe you have folks that aren't wanting to go in the field, but they want to learn how to run permits in the building departments. Right?
Yeah.
That's a skill on its own that can very much be entry level. Install, like, getting into the install work on roofs, etc. The solar industry is kind of been in an interesting place because of transitions of the net metering policy, where unfortunately there's kind of a lull right now in terms of need, but that's not going to last long, and I think you're going to see an ever-growing need for electrical skills and just basic job skills. So I would say yes, absolutely hiring. Lots of folks are on the field side, and then we'll continue to look for entry-level positions kind of on the administrative side and business side, is whenever we can, or internships, or just any way to get people into these programs. And happy to talk. I'll make sure to add my contact in the comments here. Happy to learn more about the programs that a lot of you have going, and if there's ways that I can be a resource, or even develop like kind of a collaborative resource where in partners of ours that want to sign up to potentially get entry-level workers sent their way, we could certainly try to connect those dots.
Fantastic. So my training program is the Intro to EV Technology. And I think kind of similar to Jaime's, I saw his comment. His is, I guess, going from diesel to electric. So yeah, just looking for the jobs to place our participants.
Okay.
Thank you. I will find you.
Yeah, no, I'll put I just tried to comment my email in the comments here. I'll do that. So it's great.
And for World for Solar, we're currently in the middle of developing a hard site for training, and it's just going to be in Las Vegas, not in California. And so on the integrator side, yeah, we're not hiring immediately, but those opportunities will come up, and so I can leave my contact info as well. The way our business model works is we actually don't do the installations ourselves. We manufacture the hardware, and we essentially work with contractors that are already out there, and they don't necessarily have to be solar contractors, because we have the ecosystem that allows us to provide the additional resources to the particular contractor individual that wants to do the project, to fill in the gaps for the areas in which they don't know how to do. And so when it comes to, for example, digging the hole in the ground and doing the rebar cage and the anchor bolt assembly kit, etc., if you're not a general contractor, you don't necessarily know how to do that. So as we build our certified integrator portfolio, we build these relationships, and I know a lot of them are also looking for entry level support. And so I'll keep you in mind, because that's part of the ecosystem and building that network. And so for us, it's certified integrator training for our product, which is directly connected to the integrators that we work with, needing folks to work in their space. So then we can always kind of keep putting that information out and see where it lands for you.
That's great, because we're working closely with Grid Alternatives, because we want to create kind of stackable curriculum, so that maybe after they're done with our training on EV, then they're going to go train with Grid on solar, and then so they have options. And if they want to move to Nevada, they can move to Nevada.
Yeah, great, awesome.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you very much, Dr. Yanez, for expanding and making these connections here, and for also raising Jaime Lopez, who is from Santa Ana College, by the way. Thank you for elevating his question as well, or comment that's very similar, to yours in terms of looking for partnerships. So thank you for putting your contact info there, Sean. Jaime, feel free to reach out, right, to Sean. Nick, if you want to type in your email address as well, so folks could reach out to you. And really appreciate that. I know Jaime is in the process of also developing new curriculum at Santa Ana College, and certainly is eager to find these partnerships. And we certainly want to help facilitate those opportunities for partnership to continue to create opportunities in workforce in this space. So thank you all for that. Are there any other questions from any of our attendees, anyone else on the call before we just wrap up in these last few minutes we have? Feel free to unmute, come off camera.
Hi, it's me, Kimberly Collins. Hi, I'm with Cal State San Bernardino, so I'm a 4-year educational institute, and I also have a 17-year-old who's thinking he just wants to go be an electrician, and I'm saying, hey, that's great, but I think you should also get your 4-year degree, because when you're 50 and it's really hard to climb on those roofs, what else can you do? So I'm just throwing it out there, and I'm here trying to create maybe a new degree in our business college around sustainability management. And I'm thinking, can we get a lot of these young people doing both, right? Getting a degree, a 4-year degree, so they can go down another path maybe someday. Because I also talk to a lot of parents who are looking at their kids and saying, hey, my kid's in this pathway, and they're going to get a degree, and I just got out of high school and just started working, and now I'm stuck. I can't go any further. So again, it's just a thought, doing both at the same time. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, thank you for that other perspective, because that's important for me too, right? Like, it's like I've got my 17-year-old, like, well, what about that? What are the pathways? And I think part of my comment is like being open to it for the kids, like not to the pressure is pretty hard on kids for that. So if that 18-year-old is like, that's not for me, and they're clear on that, that's okay, and being okay with that. But that's more personal opinion, and I'm very much a believer of academics. I come from an academic family as well, and that also, that's a pathway to higher level positions that can take folks and families to whole new levels in careers. So I totally, like, just to be clear, totally aligned with both. I wonder, like, the conversation then has to be, how do you, a lot of times, like the jobs you get when you're in a 4-year degree, they might be weekend or night type work, when the school isn't happening, or midday, or you have to balance it, like a couple hours here, or like flexible schedules. And just speaking, some of the jobs I'm thinking that I did during college, and a lot of times these types of positions, the install positions are like 410s, and you're working every day, and you're getting out there. And so I think that's actually on us, I think, in the industry, to say, how can we be open to more flexible hours potentially for entry level type positions to get that experience simultaneously. So it's great feedback. That's my perspective.
Great.
Okay, I had a comment. I don't know if you can see me. I'm having issues with my camera. Or even I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you fine, Jaime.
Okay, well, I'm totally agree with Kimberly. One of the things we're doing here on the college, all the projects that you guys have created are amazing, but I had a little bit the impression that you're focusing more like on the labor side type of thing. And we're kind of like, I feel like we're forgetting about the technical stuff, like Kimberly says. What about creating programs so the workers is not stuck just doing installing panels, installing or welding? What about all these new opportunities that's going to be on the upper management, new businesses, the government, all that? So part of my program, the reason why we create our program is because we're emphasizing that they had to have at least an associate degree. Actually, we're on the process right now with Sacramento to approve that. So we're gonna have an associate degree and a certificate. So all these people is gonna be capable to understand not only the charging stations, the battery pack, but also the vehicles. So and that way they can make critical decisions down the road, because this is just gonna get better and better and better and more complicated. I'm working on a partnership with the Freightliner, and I told them about the program that we're participating here. So they're telling me they're trying to create their own grid. They're gonna try to create their own network. So so it's really interesting. So I would like to see more, like everybody also think about support the community colleges. Because I know you guys try to train your labor force, but what about us? I mean, we need to get involved with that. Because that's why we're community service. We need to provide for our community. So that's my point of view.
I got some comments, but Nick, if you want to, your hand up, there you go.
Yeah, I do. I appreciate your comment, Jaime, and I actually want to say that I support it because I came from a community college myself, and so that there is a direct correlation, at least in some spaces that's happening, because I didn't start on the labor side. I actually learned a lot of soft skills along the way, and one of the for the slides I put up, and I know I verbally mentioned some of the sort of like the labor side, but there's a lot of there's a lot of business administrative parts that are connected, and so it could be helpful to do a full sort of like a full map of all the interconnecting pieces for education, because I studied information technology at one point to start, and I've also done finance as well, and the theory I have is the more skill sets you have, the more opportunities that you create for yourself, and also the skill sets that you develop, understanding the sort of the intersectionality and connection with other industries is important, so that way you can place yourself right when you're developing those skill sets. And so I agree, it is a combination of both theory and practical. And it's a massive space. I guess what I was trying to highlight is we are starting to see a lack of the sort of the labor force, and so we cannot forget that part, because we have to keep the balance, and right now that's dropping off quite a bit. And so if we don't have that balance, it's going to hurt us.
Yeah, well said, Nick. I think that to add to that, and I also went through community colleges and totally agree with that. That just this element of both sides of some folks need that entry level kind of get to work, get out there, do it. Maybe that's not the pathway for them, but that's how are we limiting them by not supporting them in that pathway as well, which is certainly important to consider. There are technical skills. So outside of the soft skills and maybe like kind of business skills, which there's all sorts of, you get an AA or, a BA, and you're able to enter into all sorts of entry level administrative business level skills. I think those are important as well to think about. And there's going to be a lot of those, and whether it's government or utilities or program management, nonprofits, et cetera, there's a lot of opportunity there as well. That's like part of this. The technical stuff, you think about like, at the city college I went to, there was drafting skills. There was, welding, deep sea welding, in fact, which is crazy, but, these types of skills, electrical programs, construction programs. I mean, those are wonderful, construction technology programs for the work we do. They really set people up for success, and it's well-rounded. And so I think, yeah, absolutely support that. And then also it's about the pathways. I think about, how do we, depending on the communities, different folks here are trying to support, making sure that no matter what it is, that there's a pathway into supporting this, right? Maybe it goes to labor from high school, or not, or high school dropouts to labor that turns into a whole career in front of these people with possibilities, or it's the college pathway simultaneously in post-college. So I see this, and I don't live and breathe workforce development, but I love the work everyone here is doing and support it, and want to collaborate as much as I can. But my take is like give opportunity, no matter what the path is, give that person a pathway. And yeah, so I'll stop there.
Thank you all. I really appreciate this conversation. I know we can go on forever. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, so I'm going to wrap us up here. But I really want to just thank everyone for contributing to as well to the conversation, to this webinar, with the questions. But we have run out of time. Again, feel free to contact Sean or Nick. They have dropped their emails in the chat with any other additional questions you may have, or opportunities for partnerships, ideas that have sparked from this webinar. I'm sure that they will love to hear from you and have a dialogue of what's possible. So again, this is our last Workforce Development Advisory Committee for the year. Our next one is slated to take place on January 9th. Same time, 10 a.m. More details we'll send out more details to come in the coming months, with calendar invites for the WDAC meetings for the 2024 calendar year. And then our next industry partner webinar series will also take place in 2024, with a date to be determined for Q1. But once we determine that date, we'll put out a communication on it, send the calendar invites to everyone. And again, as always, we will be following up with everyone with a follow-up email that contains the link to the recording and a PDF copy of the PowerPoint presentation for today's webinar. Next slide, please. Just want to provide everyone the contact information for the team here. Next slide. There you go. Just quick contact information there for our team. Anyone has any questions, you want to reach out to us. Next slide. And that's the CalStart team. But with that, I just want to thank you all for your time. I know we went a little over time here, but thank you for sticking here with us. And I know there's so many more great conversations that we're going to have, and great ideas that are going to pan out of this collaboration. Want to wish you all a great rest of your day and week. And once again, just thank you for your time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.